Welcome, everybody, to the Marketing Phoenix interview series, where my guests and I give you best growth strategies for marketing that leads to sales. My name is Melissa Rogozinski, and I'll be your host. Before we dive in, please be sure to click your follow button and subscribe to our Apple podcast. It's brand new. And don't forget to share your favorite episodes with your network and tag RPC Strategies on LinkedIn. So I'm delighted to have Jody Glidden, founder and CEO of Postilize, as our guest today. Jody and I met several months ago through another colleague and have become fast friends. And I'm super excited about Postilize, but more than that, really providing you with quality education on using AI in marketing and sales. So Jody, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
So Jody, why don't you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your career. You've been in law for about 25 years, a little bit shorter than me, but tell us about all of the companies that you built, what you do, and a little bit about Postilize.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I started in the early 90s with my first tech startups, but really didn't start selling to law firms until around 2005. In 2010, I started a company called IntraHive, which is probably what I'm most known for up until now. It was one of the largest legal software companies in the world, became one of the largest legal software companies in the world, focused on business development type data and some other things. So that was a lot of fun. A year and a half ago, I started Postilize, which is really a software that helps. It wouldn't have been possible before generative AI, but it's really digital assistance to help perform a lot of the business development type tasks that some of the law firms need to grow their business.
So we're going to dive right into that. And so Jody and I are going to discuss how to use AI in legal marketing and client relationship management specifically. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, apologies about that. I don't know why I had it as being at 12:30, so my apologies for being a little bit late.
No, you're welcome. So everybody, this is Josh Lida. He is a senior associate at Shendell Pollock. Did I say that correctly?
Shendell Pollock, close enough. Yeah.
And Josh and I met at the Coral Gables Bar Association a few weeks ago. He's an IP attorney and was on a panel there about using AI in the law firm. So we just got started, Josh. So why don't we've got an audience here on the back end. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you and your career and what you do at Shendell?
Sure, absolutely. So the firm itself is a complex litigation law firm. So we handle all various forms of litigation. With a heavy emphasis on like professional liability. So we represent a lot of professionals, whether it's insurance agents or attorneys or anything along those lines. We also do business disputes and various other complex litigation matters. Me personally, prior to joining to the firm, I had my own law firm where I had an art and business law practice, anything from transactional work and advising artists, galleries, upstart NFT companies, to litigation in those fields as well. And that's sort of how I got into the AI space, was through the NFT space. I educate very, very heavily on crypto and NFT for lawyers, for artists, for businesses. A big part of what I try to do is make it so that it's easily accessible for people. Take it out of the clouds, bring it down to earth, so that everyone can kind of get up to speed on it. And that sort of led me to the AI space, where we met at the Coral Gables presentation. I think there's a lot of ethical concerns that people need to be aware of, but it's something that's not going anywhere, and you gotta kind of learn about it to integrate it into your practice.
Yeah, it's we're way past the point of you wrapping ourselves around it and making this a regular tool. So we're going to start with some questions about legal marketing, and then we'll move into a couple on sales and business development, and then close it out and open it up for QA with our audience. So Jody, we're going to start with you first. So how do AI-powered tools generate high-quality, client-centric legal content and at scale? How does it actually work?
Yeah, so I think one of the things is everybody, now familiar with AI to some degree. And a lot of people, when they think AI, they think ChatGPT. And you try, let's say you're a 50-person firm or a 1,000-person firm, try teaching people how to actually use ChatGPT to try to produce something high quality at scale, and it's going to be very difficult. So there's a series of tools that are coming out by different vendors like ourselves at Postilize and others to help really make it so that any person can use it. We're trying to not make this a real technical thing. The types of content that are most used by law firms for business development or marketing, it's really of two types mainly. There's social content for LinkedIn, for Twitter, for blog posts, things like that. And then the second type would be for business development type communication. So, making sure that you're never going long periods of time between matters without communicating with your clients, that the system will notice and help you draft something. It doesn't have to be what you send, but at least it will help you draft something and get you started. Other business events that could matter, like when somebody that is your main point of contact at one of your main clients leaves the firm. There's a lot of different use cases, but essentially having something that can take the power of AI, but kind of bring it down to, like Josh said, for the masses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about how we harness AI to personalize legal marketing messages. And because you and I have talked about this before, and it has everything to do with prompt engineering and testing. And so talk to us a little bit about, once you put something in there, how do we personalize the message and really make it our own?
Yeah, well, I think the personalization is the key, right? Because people have a tendency to just take AI created content as it comes and then pump it out, and that actually leads to worse outcomes than not using it at all. I think it's important that you actually have personalization. So if you're sending out in the same way that sending out a mailer to 1,000 people is less impactful than sending one-on-one messages. I think you need to have the same sort of mindset and just put in that little extra bit of work to make sure that what you're creating is personalized. So it's very possible to do that. You can do that with tools, or you can do that manually. It's obviously easier with tools, but personalization is critically important in order to get the best. Let's say if you're talking about on the social side, if you want to get the best read rates, share rates, and things like that, it's super important. For drafting of emails, messages, things like that. If they're not personalized, you're not going to get good open rates. You're not going to get good response rates. It's in some cases going to insult your client because they're going to think that you're sort of faking it. So you really do need to put in the effort.
Yeah, and I know that a year or so ago when we were watching this, and I finally have been public about this, we lost a client to AI, and the CEO of the international company is like, we love working with you. We love your team. We love everything that you've done, your project management. And they're like, we're trying very hard to find another way to continue to work with you, but we trained the AI to do X, and we just can't justify the cost anymore. And so I had to take a step back, and I went to the team and I said, this is what's happened. And of course, I got the response I thought I would from the team. And I said, I understand and I agree with you, but we still have to solve this problem. And are we going to be out of a job? And this is the same conversation that legal practitioners are having as well, too. And you're seeing bar opinions from Florida and California and New York. And I know, Josh will jump into some of that here in just a little bit. But there are opinions coming down the pipeline that are making it very clear that we have an ethical obligation to our clients to leverage these tools at their most advanced level for the efficiencies. And what may have took 5 hours last year to do, if you've got a tool that can do it in an hour, you have to do that. You cannot overbill your clients anymore. So I started researching it. I wrote an article, which is part of what led up to this, about copyright issues. But in that article, in my presentations, I show people how you come up with one idea and one concept as a starting point. And AI, all of these AIs, these are a tool. And like you said, it's a digital assistant, it's an AI assistant. You have to learn prompt engineering, but I never take anything at face value. I'll put something in there and then I'll reiterate it 2 or 3 times, and maybe I'll add to my instructions until I get what I want. And that's how I take the path to personalization using AI tools. It's through prompt engineering and several iterations, refining my instructions, and it's very unique every time. So, Josh, with that, I want to kind of hit into the next question. Let's talk about, Josh, the ethical considerations and potential biases that we need to be aware of when we're integrating or using some of these AI tools in our legal marketing and sales strategies.
Yeah, so legal marketing is interesting, right? You have companies that assist, such as your own, that assist lawyers and law firms in developing marketing plans that they put out to the public. But obviously, there are the ethical obligations and guidelines that we have typically issued by, we're in Florida, issued by the state of Florida, any other state that you're in or practicing in. So simply because, and I think we spoke about this when I was at the Coral Gables event, we don't necessarily have to change or impact our analysis of what is an ethical marketing ad, right? Like the same ethics are going to apply, right? It can't be misleading. It has to have accurate information. It has to comply with the requirements of the Florida bar. Simply because we're using AI, I think it goes to what you were saying. You can't just prompt it, have something get spit out, and then automatically put it out there. It's not the right thing to do for a number of reasons, not the least of which is because if you don't do your due diligence and make sure that, hey, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, maybe you just put out something or provided something to your client that's against the bar rules. Or maybe it needed to be submitted to the Florida bar and get approved prior to being put out there because of the way that it was formatted. So all of those things are kind of thoughts that we just need to have. To your point, it's not that this is changing or replacing anything that we do with marketing or anything, or even the law necessarily. It's not changing the practice of the law. What's changing is how it's done, the speed with which it's done, and maybe the steps that you take to get to that final product. So I would just reiterate, like you were already saying, reiterate on it, first of all, to make sure that it's either personalized or quality. I've spoken about this a lot. I see a lot of restaurants and bars putting out, they love using the Dolly and they love using the Mid-Journey, but all the images kind of look exactly the same, like the prompts are different, but the glossiness of it all looks the same and it starts to become repetitive. So make sure that it's unique for your own marketing purposes, then make sure that it's compliant with the bar rules. As far as biases are concerned, we don't know necessarily what inherent biases are in certain AIs, right? They're owned by companies or managed by companies. So, for example, you might use one and there might be a bias against a certain demographic by accident, just because of the way that the data that it was trained on or whatever it may be. So those are things just to kind of keep an eye on. If you're looking at the product consistently and it seems to be spewing out kind of the same things, and maybe there's a bias in the way that you're writing the prompts, or maybe there's an actual issue with the AI that you're actually using for that particular product or particular work.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. The article that I wrote on AI copyright issues a year ago, after we did the research and put everything together, it really came down to three things. And we're asking, can AI claim copyright? Can humans claim copyright? And really, who can claim copyright? And so we hear a lot of people saying, oh, we can write our website, the copy for our website, we can write blog articles, and you can do those things, but you don't own it. You don't have copyright. If you're using these databases and these LLMs and AIs to write all this, you have to ask, what were they trained on? Because the data sets that they were trained on, by the mere fact they already exist, already have copyright, and you can't double dip on that. And so there were once we did the article, there were three requirements for being able to claim copyright. One, it has to be original content. So you actually have to write your own content. Now you can feed it back into the system if you need help with a social media post, or you need 5 SEO friendly, titles for the article, things like that. Or I've gone in because I needed to summarize something. You can use it to regurgitate, but you have to create the information natively yourself. Second of all, it has to be created by a natural human. And a machine cannot claim any kind of ownership or trademark or anything over what it creates. And it can't be copied from existing databases. So, okay. So anything else?
Can I just chime in on that real quick as well?
Sure.
So I just want to build off that. So when it comes to the copyright issues, other than the fact that we know that right now the Copyright Office is not going to issue a copyright for AI generated materials, there's a lot of questions that are unanswered going forward. We don't know necessarily. There's a lot of litigation over the data sets and whether or not just training the AI on those data sets is an inherently infringing activity, or whether it's going to be the output that's the inherently infringing activity. You raise an interesting point as well, where you draft your own copy,
Mhm.
and then feed it through the AI and then kind of take what's out of there. I do wonder, I mean, I think for me, I think you should retain the copyright in that personally, but that my personal opinion is kind of irrelevant. I am curious to see how a court would interpret that based on the interpretations that the Copyright Office has taken on the case law that we have and the stances that have been taken. So it's a really fascinating area that's evolving. And that practitioners should kind of be aware of it, to your point, that, you know, if you use it in a way, you may not necessarily have a copyright over the final product, or whatever it may be, but it doesn't mean it won't change in the future. But that's sort of where we're at right now, and it's an ever-changing process.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think also, and this is just kind of a concept I've seen in law since the beginning of getting involved with laws, is that uh, like lawyers are always weighing risk versus reward, right? It's kind of their job, right? To raise, to at least in corporate law, to raise the risk. Hey, there's a 3% chance that this may happen, and if this happens, and so then they'll bring that to the company, and the company says, well, okay, well, there's a 75% increased productivity and a 3% chance of this, and so this is what we're going to choose to do or whatever. So I think I think what we're seeing in practice is that the world's largest law firms are using it, and they're adopting it very quickly. And we're seeing emergency budgets being put in place that are massive, to increase their productivity, increase their margins, increase their ability to compete in their marketing and in their business development. And so I think, what we have to protect against is that we don't get so risk averse that we end up getting trampled by the people who are, using the anabolic steroids, and you're not. To use an analogy, like, I think in the end, you're all competing against everybody else for business. And so there's like here and there's some small cases around copyright that they're trying to litigate. Like, for example, there's one, of all the data sources that ChatGPT has used to train their system, there's one going on right now with the New York Times. And I think there's a million other things that they use to train their data that there was no issue with at all. So yeah, I guess that's one thing I would caution is, like, maybe don't be too cautious to the point where you give up your business advantage to a competitor.
analysis paralysis.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about how to maintain a competitive advantage. And so I'm jumping ahead. Let's talk about it in a minute. But last week, ALM, Legal Tech News, put out an article summarizing a particular panel at the CLOC event, which is corporate legal ops. And it was a panel of 5 or 6 corporate legal GCs and AGCs, and they listed 9 different ways that they were leveraging AI in corporate legal, and made it very clear. There were 3 of the 9 statements that made it very clear that they intend to reduce the amount of work they're sending to outside counsel, and they're going to be asking outside counsel how they're leveraging legal tech and AI to do more efficient work. And if law firms aren't using it, they're going to start losing that business, which is going to create a competitive advantage for those law firms who are.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that question in a minute. So let's start with Josh first on this question, because I'm asking you both this question to chime in on this. We're going to jump into sales now. How can we leverage AI as a sales tool, specifically to build stronger client relationships and anticipate client needs and prospects? So let's talk a little bit about costing. Josh, from a lawyer's point of view in a law firm, what are your thoughts on that question?
Well, I think it's interesting because in the past, there's so many different ways to market for attorneys, right? Where there are just the general Instagram posts or the social media posts, there's the blog postings, there's the video blogs, and each one is different content, and each one kind of has its own nuances of what you have to do. And again, going back to the ethical considerations, there are sort of their own ethical considerations that kind of overlap, but you got to keep in mind each time. So for me, we're a boutique firm. We're not a big, massive firm, using us as an example. My prior firm was 3 attorneys. Like, we're smaller law firms here. You don't have as big of a marketing budget necessarily. Maybe you don't have, someone dedicated to that. So leveraging ChatGPT to either create an outline or create like a data source, like, so you can source the internet, for example. You said how to get prospects. So if you have a particular type of practice and you want to go after a particular new type of client, you can maybe leverage AI to sort of source materials on, what kind of marketing works towards that group necessarily. Now, again, do your due diligence. Don't just take it and run with it. You should double check to make sure all that information checks out. But that's one way to do that. Another way to do that, again, is to do an outline for a written blog. I've written many blogs in the past. I've done many presentations. It is time consuming, especially when you want to do each one differently and want to give each one its respect that it deserves, to sit down and do an outline every single time. An hour here, an hour there. Then you have to write the actual piece itself. Then you have to actually create it. Then you have to actually post it. So these are all steps of the process that will eventually be automated. I know that there are already tools that can automate your social media postings. So maybe if you create a pipeline of postings, you can leverage AI to have a more regular ongoing post situation. Because while I'm not a marketer, I do know, just from being in marketing as an attorney generally, that you have to post consistently. You can't do it once every 5 months. It's not really going to work all that well. So these are some strategies that attorneys can leverage in their practice to sort of beef it up. And even if you're, and using a marketing team as well, maybe it helps come up with ideas. So when you go to your marketing expert, when you go to your hired talent, you say to them, look, we did a little bit of research. Here's what we're thinking. Is this a good starting point? And then you kind of let them run with it. So there's a lot of different ways. It's a pick how to play sort of game, right? Like, you get to kind of choose how you want to leverage it, particularly right now, but doing the research into it at the moment and experimenting with it is really key to learn how to do that going forward.
Well, and I want to add to what you said too before I punt to Jody. So, with attorneys being as busy as they are, practicing law, representing clients, really working towards those best outcomes for clients. Unfortunately, marketing and business development fall through the cracks. It's a necessary component, but it falls through the cracks, and that's where Jody's going to come in and be able to support that. But from RPC Strategies point of view, if you can write that one blog article yourself, there are ways to use, like Josh is saying, AI to, pick it apart and, create 2 or 3 social media posts out of it. So you can get the blog article posted, but then pick out little snippets, create a quote card, create an animated GIF, put that out there. You can record your own video. If you can get it done in about 2 minutes and just hit on the highlights, right, then you can create a video. So as busy as attorneys are, if you can do one blog article, write that yourself, and do it the right way, there are so many other marketing deliverables that you can pull out of that one. So if you're doing just one a month, you can get runway out of that for a whole month off of just one piece. So, but with that, and that makes attorneys' time more efficient, and it maximizes your marketing and business development efforts. But with that, Jody, I want to punt to you and let you kind of help tie this part of it up. So from everything that Josh and I have both recommended to the audience, how can we leverage AI specifically as a sales tool to build stronger client relationships and anticipate client needs?
Yeah, so my last company, which was called IntroHive, was really about measuring the client relationships across the whole firm. And in some cases, we had 50 of the top 100 law firms in the world, and we had small firms too. So we got pretty good at algorithmically measuring strength of relationship. And if you think about it, the strength of your relationship really comes down to a bunch of different factors. It's how you engage with people on social media. It's how you engage with people face to face. So we see a lot of people get invited to sports games and dinners and things like that. It's how you engage with people on the phone, and how you engage with people over text, and how you engage with people over email, and that's kind of it. And there's only so many dinners you can take people to, and I think that was kind of that was one of the big pain points that we were finding with a lot of partners, is they were saying, like, I want my life back. I know it's my duty to the firm to bring in X amount of money, but I need a life as well. And so one of the things that you can do is, I think AI can be really helpful in at least helping keep you organized. There's a firm that we're working with in California, and the top rainmaker over there has about a dozen people working on their team. They have 32 unicorns, as clients, just under him, because he has this team of about a dozen people that are watching all these things. Like, for all my top clients, never let me go more than X amount of time without speaking to them. For all my mid-tier clients, then it should be this amount of time. If any of them ever raised money a year ago, well, then reach out now and offer, hey, if you're thinking of doing a money raise again anytime soon, we have some introductions for you. Like, just being helpful. And it looks very, and it is very genuine, but it takes an army of people in order for him to even remember the signals to reach out, and how to reach out and to reach out, appropriately. So I think that's one of the areas that is really helpful, is just having a system that can gather the signals, whether that's a computer-based system or a team of people, but somehow having a process or a system to gather all the signals so that you don't let clients slip through the cracks. And then, then there's the whole content strategy around it, right? So like, how are you going to engage with them on social? How are you going to engage with them via email? How often? And all those sorts of things. There's best practices out there. But for the smaller, more boutique firms, they may choose to do it more on their own first, like crawl, walk, run, right? But there's definitely help out there.
And I'm going to go ahead and add to the audience too. I mean, this is what RPC Strategies does. We do the whole content, the thought leadership. We craft the social, we craft the blog articles, we craft the email campaigns. But when I wrote that article and did the research, one of the first things I did, I spent several months testing it out for myself. And at first I was a little bit irritated. I was a little annoyed. But then I started learning how to use it. And I was like, oh my God, this saves me so much time. Like, this is not going to put me out of work. And it's not going to put lawyers out of work too. This makes me so much more productive and efficient. And when I wrote the 5th anniversary article that just went out, and I talked about the 5 key people every entrepreneur needs, I wrote that myself, but then I fed it into my ops guy needed an email, personalized email. We always do a personalized note from the founder of a company or a client with that newsletter that we send out every month. And I just didn't have time. We're onboarding new clients. We just launched our new website. Things are picking up. I was getting ready for this. I fed my article into an LLM, and I was like, I need an email newsletter that's personal from me, but I already had it set up with my own profile and my voice, and I've trained it over several months, and it put something out. And I tested it and changed it a little bit, but like, this is what I do for a living. This is what people pay us to do, and I am using it. So I want to say that to encourage, especially lawyers and law firms, like, this is not going to put you out of business. It's going to make you more efficient, and your clients are expecting it. And if you don't, you're going to lose the business, which leads us to the next really exciting question. Josh, how is AI going to make the legal marketing landscape, sales and business development? How is this going to position law firms to be more competitive?
So it's interesting. I think right now, it's, to Jody's point earlier, the mega law firms have adopted this very, very quickly. And I don't know if their inner workings. I'm at a smaller firm, but I would imagine that they are heavily, heavily utilizing it for marketing purposes, for all the blogs, for all the podcasts, for all the TikToks, for everything. And I think it is going to make it more competitive, because if you have these tools that allow you to do this on a quicker time scale, right? In that we all have a very limited amount of time, right, as lawyers. So if you're able to do this on a quicker time scale, whether you're, taking your work product and giving it to RPC and letting you run with it, or whether you're just doing it in-house, however you're going to do it, as the tools proliferate, more and more lawyers are going to do it. The younger lawyers are going to know how to do it. The ones that want to become rainmakers are going to know how to get business that way. And yes, you're always going to have to take clients out to dinner. You're going to have to always go network in real life, in person. But the reality is, a lot of these introductions are going to happen more and more through the internet, as younger generations are more and more comfortable with meeting people through the internet. I mean, they meet their best friends playing, Roblox and video games. And that's only going to continue. That's not going to stop. So it's going to make it more competitive, because more and more lawyers are going to have these tools, not just the big dogs, not just the very wealthy law firms. They're all going to be available at some scale. So I think it is going to make it more competitive. And I think my hope, I am an optimist. I think that came through at the Coral Gables presentation, and I think it'll come through here. I am an optimist. I'm optimistic that it may lead to even better marketing for attorneys, because they'll have the time, right, to actually get in there and kind of make it personal, maybe make it a little bit unique, to train it to their voice and leverage that going forward, and then kind of double down over time and create like an identity. So I deal with a lot of artists, and I make my own art. And what I've found with artists is that over time they start out and they make a lot of different styles, and throughout their whole career they do that. But realistically, they kind of key in on certain things that they like. Oh, I liked that here. I liked that there. And they kind of reincorporate it over and over and over again as they move through. This is an opportunity for lawyers to do that with their marketing, with their voice, with how they communicate with their clients. And I'm a big proponent of this. I'm really against lawyers all like acting the same and looking the same and talking the same language. I dislike that a lot. I grew up with attorneys. I think it's off-putting to clients. I think it's off-putting for lawyers to have to do it themselves. So it will make it more competitive, and I'm hoping that'll actually help amp up the quality of the marketing as well. Because a lot of marketing with lawyers, it's also kind of educational too. There's that weird blend of the marketing with the educational component as well. So it's a really nice opportunity to further interact with our clients going forward, but it will be more competitive in the future.
Jody, this is your time to shine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it actually gives an advantage to the smaller and mid-sized firms, especially because, these massive firms out there already had marketing and BD departments for the last 10 years. They've been sort of formulating specializations around this and getting the content machine going and getting processes to make sure that there were, all of the top attorneys are communicating regularly with all the top clients, so they have retention plans in place and all these sorts of things. And the smaller firms didn't, because they're busy lawyering. And so I think this kind of gives them an advantage where they can equalize. And I've actually talked to some of the smaller firms where they're saying, yeah, but what if I implement this and my all of a sudden I get a lot more business and we can't handle it? And that actually is a concern. Like, how will I recruit, and how will I recruit against the bigger firms? Because the bigger firms, tend to be in the schools and all that. And I think that's a whole other set of problems, but it's good problems to have. I think undoubtedly there is an equalization that needs to happen between the business development marketing expertise of the bigger firms and of the smaller ones. Otherwise, the bigger ones just keep getting bigger, and it just becomes unmanageable.
So in tying up, I want to really kind of punch people in the gut with this one. In your opinion, Josh, we're going to start with you. What are some of the biggest fears that lawyers and business development professionals really need to just overcome and lay down in order to successfully and ethically use AI in their business development efforts?
I think we'll say three. We'll see if I actually counted correctly in my head before I spoke. I think first and foremost is that they can't understand or use the technology. That's just silly. 30 years ago, computers were not quite as pervasive as they are now. The internet was not as pervasive. No one used Google. Westlaw was not fully, online, and not everyone was using their tools on the internet. And now everyone does it. Older lawyers, younger lawyers, everyone in between. So the idea that simply because this is this is a game-changing technology as it continues to develop in any number of fields, first and foremost, that you can do it. You can learn how to use it. They're going to dumb it down for us. They're going to make it easy for us, just like when they gave us AOL with the internet when it first came out. Like, they'll give us training wheels. They'll make it nice and simple. So first and foremost, lawyers can do this. That's number one. Number two, that we need to change anything about who we are as an attorney or as a legal marketing professional to then use the tools. You don't have to change anything about who you are. You are who you are. You have your experiences. You have your knowledge, your expertise, what makes you you. I talk about this a lot when I do presentations. I'm very big into being unique. I think every person is, and I think you should double down on that to differentiate yourself, no matter whether you're an attorney or whether you are a legal marketing professional or any other type of business that you do. And I think that's really important. So instead of thinking that you're going to have to then change what you do or change your practice or change how you operate out in the world, if anything, you can leave it exactly the same and maybe even double down on it a little bit, really key in on those things that differentiate you. By putting, to your point, hypothetically, you can throw a bunch of your previous blog posts into an AI and say, hey, analyze for me and tell me what's your perception of each one. Oh, well, you speak about this topic very well. You bring this topic up a lot, or you use this turn of phrase a lot. And then you can learn about your own strategies and how you communicate with people, so that we have, so that's two, so that we have to change anything about ourselves. And then three, that you have to take change like the ethical considerations that you already have. You don't. It's just, again, it's just applying them to a new medium. It's just a new tool to leverage. So whatever ethical considerations we have when it comes to marketing specifically, not creating the perception of an attorney-client relationship, not promising something that can't be delivered, not saying something incorrect or factually wrong in a blog or in an ad that may lead someone down the wrong path and they may blame you. These are things that aren't going to change. So I think those are the big three for me. I think when we move forward, you can use it, you can take care of it, you can still be yourself. And the knowledge you already have can be applied to this technology as it is going forward. So it's not so crazy. It's not so out there. It's not so overwhelming. It's practical. It makes sense. It's something that we do as attorneys and legal professionals on a daily basis. It's taking abstract concepts and putting them into workable strategies moving forward. And every lawyer can do that with this now. It may not all be the same strategy, but I think that's a good thing, actually.
Well, and for everybody's information, the questions that we've been going through came from 10 different articles that RPC wrote over the course of the last year because of AI. And Jody and I were talking about this right before we jumped on. We're doing a little bit of prep. And I went through and reread all the articles. I mean, we wrote them, right? So, and I've had them published, but I had to reread them. And I was really pleased to see the consistency with which we've been reporting on AI and how it uses and how it's evolved. And it has stayed in line with what media is talking about. But we did, Kate, our growth assistant, usually I will sit down and go through the articles that I write or what a guest contributes, and I will come up with the questions myself. I was going to do that. She jumped ahead of me and she put all 10 articles in there and came up with this list of questions. And we iterated it probably 7 or 8 times before we settled on the questions we want. And then I went back through and I reorganized them according to how I wanted to approach things and build on it. But the 5 questions we came up with came from all 10 articles, and we used AI to help us to consolidate all 10 articles to come up with what are all 10 of these consistently talking about. And that's how we came up with 3 marketing questions, 3 sales questions, and a closing question. So, and Jody, to what Josh was saying, Postilize's tagline is your style, your voice. So what are the biggest fears that you're seeing that lawyers in business development just simply need to overcome these fears and just lay them down and start leveraging these tools to become more competitive and to grow their businesses?
Yeah, so I think we've sort of identified 4 main ones that we see over and over among our clients. One of them is one of the ones that Josh already talked about, which is like the difficulty is like, how am I going to put this in the hands of, a 60-year-old partner or something like that? And what I'd say to that is it's all in the implementation. If you give them ChatGPT and say, learn prompt engineering, it's not going to happen. But if you give them the right person or you give them the right tool that's built for them, then it's fine. Just look at, case in point would be Apple's announcements this week, right? AI or intelligence for the rest of us. They managed to make things very, very easy. And there's ways to do it to make it very easy. The second one is just that, well, what if I sound robotic? And I actually turn people away. What I'd say to that is, I think this actually gives us the scale and opportunity to leverage to actually be more personal. Because, when you have enough stuff taken off your plate, when you don't have to remember all this stuff about like when you should be reaching out or, what you should be doing, and you have things keep, creating drafts of things for you. You have the ability to be a lot more personal. And I can tell you just from experience being a tech company that have had to deal with attorneys for 30 years, it makes a big difference. Like getting a newsletter from, Wilson Sonsini or Wilmer Hale or one of those tech law firms is interesting. It makes me remember the firm, but getting a text message from Glenn saying, hey, today's your daughter's birthday, right? How's she doing? It just makes all the difference in the world. And it took, 5 seconds and it just makes me never want to leave, regardless of, what I might think, is the shiny object that's hitting me up to try to take the business away. The third is privacy and security. So I think, a lot of people are worried about, well, what if my matters are used to train the data and things like that? You need to ask those kind of questions. You need to really understand the security model, and you need to have those assurances in writing that nothing like that is touched and nothing like that could be done. And then the last one is, will I be minimized, sort of thing. And I talked to one of the big firms yesterday, and they talked about that now they can focus a lot more, that they're not creating template agreements anymore and things like that. They have systems for that, but now they can focus more on strategy. And most good attorneys really want to focus on strategy, and that's where they really add the value, and that's where they look smart to their clients, and that's what's going to have them recommended by their clients.
Building off the last thing Jody said, I think that's one I forgot. So it would have been 4, which is the minimization of attorneys in their role, or the fear of losing their job, period, to ChatGPT. We are a litigation firm, but I do a lot of transactional work as well. I draft a lot of contracts. And people have already brought up the AI question regarding contracts in the future. But I do think it's important for people to remember, AI, even though it's designed to replicate human thought in a lot of ways, it's still not conscious. It still doesn't have your world experiences. It still doesn't have your unique voice or your strategy. So, for example, I may be able to generate a contract or generate a work paper document with an AI, but maybe it did so in a way that wasn't right for this particular situation. Maybe there's just one clause in there that didn't need to be there that changes everything, or vice versa, that something wasn't included. So that's where the skill and that's where the knowledge of the actual practitioner comes in. And I think people just need to remember that they need to differentiate themselves, that they have a perspective. Are they an aggressive attorney? Are they a more laid back attorney? Are they a very academic attorney? What is it that they want to emphasize to their clients going forward as to what differentiates them? So it kind of goes to the other things we're talking about, but Jody reminded me, and that's something I wanted to get into. You're right. You're not going to lose. It may eliminate some lower level jobs at the larger firms in, doing research or writing basic things. But as far as, small, partner level practitioners or medium sized firms or solo practitioners, it's probably not going to replace attorneys, and you're always going to have a need for that knowledge that you've developed over your lifetime.
Yeah, when in the year 1900, one of the top jobs was the blacksmith, and we all survived when when that part of the job went away, and we all moved on to something else.
Anything else you guys want to add before I wrap this up? Because I think we probably don't have any questions, and then we can go ahead and close this out. Do you have closing statements to make?
I'll go first. Just first of all, thank you so much for having me on here and for introducing me to Jody. This has been really great. It's always fun to talk about these topics, and I love that you've latched onto it so heavily, and just embraced it. I think it's really important. I do think that this topic isn't going to go anywhere, obviously, and I do think that it needs to grow. So, for me, I would just say be optimistic with it. There are obviously fears with AI. There's all kinds of things that could potentially go wrong or be used for bad, but so can the internet, so can other pieces of technology that have been created in the past. So it's really important to kind of keep an open mind and just be optimistic towards the future and try to leverage it how we can and try to take advantage of this great opportunity that we're being presented with ourselves here.
Jody?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, first of all, thank you, Rogo, for the invite. Great to meet you, Josh. I think this is actually going to create a lot more revenue for most of the firms. And it's going to create a much more personal relationship with the clients. You're going to get recommended a lot more by your clients. And those are the best clients to get. When you come in from a recommendation, there's nothing better than that. You retain them for life often. So.
And I want to add to what Josh and Jody are saying for the audience, and for those who are going to see this when we publish it in July. Back to the story that I gave at the beginning where we lost a client to AI, and that is what catapulted my research and all the exposure that we've gotten as a result of that article. We are now at a place where the clients that we are getting are clients who have built in AI to their platform. So the very thing that cost us a client, we are now gaining clients. Those are the clients that are coming to us because we put ourselves out there. We did the research, we embraced it, we taught ourselves how to use it, and we use it with our clients. We create everything natively, but we ask the clients, and I know law firms have policies too on how they can and can't use it. And so I'm here to tell everybody, if you continue to ignore this, you will lose clients. If you embrace it, to exactly what Jody's saying, you're absolutely going to gain clients. We are triple what we've been losing, and we continue to gain steam and momentum ahead. So I absolutely encourage everybody to embrace AI. in a variety of legal tech tools, especially in marketing and sales. If you have any questions on how to use it, any one of the three of us here can help you. So please reach out to me. I'm happy to provide information. And I just want to thank Josh and Jody very much for joining me today for the Marketing Phoenix interview series and talking about AI in legal marketing and sales. Thank you to the audience for joining us as well. I hope you've enjoyed it. And please, again, follow us on Apple Podcasts, connect with RPC Strategies on LinkedIn, register for our newsletter. And you can contact us directly at rpc@rpcgrowthstrategies.com or 205-873-1234. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.